Welcome back everyone. I've managed to squeeze in one more video, the final video of the control card, which is a very nice way to close the year at a good point and in a high. The boards have come back from PCBWay right before Christmas, and as you can see right now, I've managed to already populate them and fool around with them, play around with them, test the functionality at the same level that we've tested it in the simulations in the previous episodes. The complete test, of course, will require bringing all the cards together with the backplane, the computer itself, so we can test all the conditional jumps. But the complete contents of the decoding memories that you see right now, the Talos ES DM0 to DM3, they are now in there, taking into account the flags and everything. So we can test it even a little bit more than during the simulations and see if, at least in principle, everything is working as expected. Before we review the assembled board and discuss the tests that I did, I wanted to have a look at the bare board with you. This board was kindly made by PCBWay for me for free in exchange for a review, but they didn't tell me what I should say in the review, so I would say what I think, what I will find out by reviewing this board. This is a 4-layer board with dominant directions, so the dominant direction is vertical here on the top layer. On the bottom layer it's horizontal. There are two inner planes. There is a ground plane and a VCC plane, and there is the copper fill. The copper fill on top is VCC. Then there is a ground plane underneath, providing a reference for the signals on the top, and then underneath that there is a VCC plane providing a reference for the traces on the bottom, and then the bottom layer with ground fill. So you basically have VCC ground in the stack. You may have recalled from previous episodes that I use a lot of tiny vias for return path, transfer vias. So when a signal goes from one layer to the other, the reference plane changes from ground to VCC. So tiny little vias next to every signal via provide not only a return path, but a clean transfer of the reference plane. And they are very tiny. I used 0.2 millimeter drill holes. They need to be tiny such that you can place them very close to the original signal vias. And the thing is, at PCBWay, their standard process, not the advanced one, their standard process can make vias this small with 0.2 millimeter drill holes, and it's not more expensive to do that. So I treated this design as a high-speed design, even though it's not a high-speed design. This will run at, I don't know, 1 megahertz, maybe a little more, a little less, I don't know. But since it doesn't make it more expensive, I designed it as a high-speed board such that I guarantee that whatever bottleneck for the clock is, it's not going to be signal integrity. It will, in all likelihood, be the propagation delays of all the chips, all the circuits that are in the critical path. And by designing it as a high-speed board, I ensure that that will be the bottleneck, that's unavoidable anyway, and not something else. Now, the question, of course, is, because I put these tiny vias right in between traces that are already close together, since the transfer return path vias and transfer vias, they need to be close to the signal vias, so I pack them tightly together so they work. But if the process tolerances are such that the PCB manufacturer is not precise in where they put the vias and where they drill the via holes, then I could have short circuits. I could have a return path via that touches a trace next to it, and since the return path via is grounded, that could lead to a short circuit. So using these vias, these many tiny vias, as very close to traces as I do, often they are in between traces that are already close together, this only makes sense if your PCB manufacturer is reliable and can place these vias accurately and precisely. So that's what we are going to review now. I'm going to be using a handheld microscope because my better microscope is not big enough to accommodate this entire large PCB. So we are going to go into some areas of relative congestion and look at whether the vias are placed accurately and not bridging, not touching the traces right next to it or anything. Let's start from here. There's a clock line in here with a lot of return path vias. Some of them are what I like to call lightning rod vias. They ensure that the return path from all the signals around the clock line go through them and don't interfere with the clock line itself. So let's have a look there. So it's difficult to move because the movement on the screen is the opposite of the physical movement of the camera, but here we go. You see this via right in the middle of the screen? That's a clock line via, and I surrounded it with 4 ground vias, 4 of them, providing sort of a lightning rods. And they are very close to the traces next to them on both sides, and to vias next to them. But as you can see, they are precisely placed. They do not touch the traces at all. And the drill holes are also precise. This drill hole here is bang in the middle of the via pad. This one here is slightly off center, but well within tolerance. This one is also almost bang in the middle, and this one bang in the middle. So this is pretty good. So let's look further. Let's go around and look at some other vias. This is a return path via, very close to the signal via, but not touching the trace. That's pretty good. Let's see, there is some more here. There we go. Also pretty precisely placed. No worries there. Now these are the through-hole pads. What we can try to look is whether they are plated through correctly. So let's try to have a tilted, slanted view, but I have to play with the focus now. There we go. You can see my mat on the other side through the hole. And what I want to do is to see if the internal walls of the via are properly plated through, and they are. You can clearly see the metal there, very uniform. It is covering everything. The metal is certainly connected to the pad. Let's see this one here. Yep. Yeah, you can see the mat underneath, and you can clearly see the metal inside the through-hole pad. So they're very nicely plated through. It is very important that they are plated through. Yeah, it's very consistent. Yeah, this is a nice job. There are some more. These are stitching vias that you will see here. These are stitching vias. They basically connect the copper fill around this line, which is probably one of the clock lines, otherwise I wouldn't have protected it so much. It stitches this copper fill here on both sides to VCC. The copper fill on the top layer is VCC. And this provides electromagnetic insulation for the line in the middle. This trace in the middle here is a clock. And of course, the clock should be the most protected line, because if you have jitter, reflections and jitter in the clock line, you can have spurious clock transitions, which screw up the entire functionality. So that's why this one is protected by copper fill that is stitched every few centimeters to make sure that this copper fill is indeed VCC, even for very high frequencies. So it doesn't float. That's the reason for the stitching. And here, there's still stitching there. All right, let's have a look. Let's see. There is an area here that has some vias that are very close together. You see, you can see that the return path vias and the stitching vias, although they are very close to the traces and signal vias that they are meant to protect, they are not touching them. The distance is exactly the distance stipulated in the design, and the drill hole can be a little bit off center. That's okay, so long as it doesn't touch the edges, it's okay. The important thing is that the pad itself be precisely placed, so it doesn't get too close to the tracer, but at the same time close enough as per the design. Here's another example here where I moved the trace sideways a little bit to make space for this return path via in the middle, and it is indeed in the middle. You can see the distance to the trace on the bottom is more or less the same as the distance to the trace on the bottom, on the top. So that's pretty good. Here is another through-hole pad. Let's have a look at the plating. It's another chip. That's excellent. It's very uniform through plating. That's actually surprisingly good for a prototype PCB manufacturer. You see a little impurity there, but that's not manufacturing. That's my handling of the PCB. I'm wearing black clothes, as you can see, and these microfibers detach and get stuck inside the hole. Yep, everything I'm seeing is very reassuring. Now look at this part here. There are some closed vias there, but as you see, it's very consistent. Although this via here in the center of the screen is squeezed tightly between two traces that are very close together, it's correctly placed. The distance to either trace is roughly the same. Same thing here. The drill hole is a little bit off center, but that doesn't matter much, so long as it's within the tolerances. It's very consistent. The return path and stitching vias never get alarmingly close to the trace at all, even though they were placed very close. This is exactly the distance stipulated in the design. So yeah, the conclusion is, if you're making boards at PCBWay, you can design them as high-speed boards because they will not become more expensive for you, and even their standard process is precise enough that you can use this tiny vias placed very close to traces, and they will not cause problems. They will not touch the traces and cause any short. Let's have a quick look on the other side. There are some tightly packed vias in here. As you can see, the vias are not filled on the top. Let me go back to show you. On the top layer, the solder mask, when it was placed on top, it filled the holes, the via holes. That's not a problem at all. The electric signal, if this is your via hole, the electric signal it gets transmitted on the outside edges of this little cylinder that is the via. It doesn't get transmitted through the core of the via. It's always on the outside. So whether the via is metal in the middle, or resin, or I don't know, jam or peanut butter, it doesn't matter, because the signal is always on the outer layer of the via. So the fact that these vias are partly filled with the solder mask isn't a problem at all. On the bottom layer, however, you were looking here, the solder mask didn't close the holes. This one in the center is now partly covered, but not quite. And that's also okay. Air in the via is just as good as peanut butter or metal or solder mask or resin. It really doesn't matter electrically. And this is an area of tightly packed traces and vias, and as you can see, nothing gets alarmingly close. Nothing gets even in the neighborhood of causing a short. So the process is pretty precise. We can try to look at the through plating of the via itself. It will be very tiny, but maybe we can see something there. It's too difficult to see with this little microscope. It's too tiny to see. Don't get enough light in there. Yeah, I'm not getting enough light in there to see it. They should be through plated as well. It's important that they be through plated. And then I'm sure they are. Yeah, so that's about it. There is no doubt PCBWay makes good boards, even if you design them as high-speed boards using their standard process. So I feel completely free to continue to do this without fear that their process tolerances will screw things up because I'm putting these ground vias close to signals everywhere. All right, that's it for the board review. Okay, let's give this a quick test. I just turned it on. The flags are all set via this dip switch, but it doesn't matter because we are not going to meaningfully test conditional jumps here. We need the entire machine to be together to test that properly. So this will come later. So the flags don't matter. This is the reset button. The system goes into reset when this LED is off because reset is active low. But I see that the halt signal is low as well, which is active. So now it's high, so now it's inactive. So now the system is out of reset and out of a halt. So let's set up an opcode. I will set up opcode 67 AR1++ because it's easy to recognize on the control signals in the execution stage. So the opcode is set here. This is what is simulating the input from the instruction memory. We have 7 in here, and that's the AR1++. It increments the value of address register 1. That's what's coming out from memory. This is the instruction register. There is nothing in it yet. And these are the decoded control signals of the execution stage. And of course, there is nothing in them yet. We just came out of reset. And these are some of the other control signals. Here we have the system clock, reset, halt, the outgoing mail flag, and the incoming mail flag. We're not going to use the incoming and outgoing mail flags. It's more meaningful to test these things in the whole system. So if I now press the clock, then this opcode 7 should go to the instruction register. There we go. It's in the instruction register. It's also in the immediate register because the immediate register always fetches the same value as the instruction register, if you remember previous episodes, but it's a meaningless value right here. The only meaningful one is here. So because I pressed the clock, the output from the instruction memory will change because we advanced the program counter. To simulate that, I will change the dip switches here, and I'll put opcode 8 coming from the instruction memory. So now we have opcode 8 here, opcode 7 here, and nothing still in the execution stage. But when I press the clock, I should get the AR1++ here. And that's exactly what we get. AR1 count enable is now active. So now we have AR1++ here, AR2++ there, that's opcode 8, and because we pressed the clock, we have to put another opcode. I will put opcode 1. Oh no, that's not 1. Okay, opcode 1 is coming out from instruction memory, opcode 8 is in the instruction register, and opcode 7 is executing. That's the AR1++. This is AR2++. So if I press the clock now, this should come here, and this should come there. So now we have opcode 1 in the instruction register, and this I see here AR2 count enable. So this is the AR2++ in the execution stage. Opcode 1 is a load immediate. It's A high receives immediate. Now that means that the next value coming from the instruction memory is an immediate. So to simulate an immediate, I would just put a low nibble active coming from the instruction memory. The next cycle, this is now an immediate and not an opcode. Let's see if the logic will work correctly. So opcode 1 here, opcode 8 here. If I press the clock, this should go here and this should go there. Opcode 1 is A high receives immediate. So let's see. So now we have here immediate high output enable and A high load enable. That's exactly right. So the output of the immediate register, which we see here, is enabled, and the input of the A high register, the load enable, is active. So A high will receive this value next cycle. And in the IR, we have nothing, because that's a no-op now, since we are dealing with the immediate value this time. So that's exactly right. So I have to change this value now because I pressed the clock. So let's go back to opcode 7, which is the AR1++. So the moment I press the clock now, A high in the other board, which I'm not showing you, will latch this value, which comes from the immediate register. Where is the immediate register? Here. Yeah, this is the immediate register. The value is displayed over here. So if I press this now, this should go there. And we should have a no-op here, because in the IR there is a no-op right now. So if I press clock, now this went there. We have a no-op in here, just as we should. But I have also incremented the value coming out from instruction memory. So let's put opcode 8 here now. So now we have opcode 8 here, opcode 7 here, and a no-op there. If I press the clock, opcode 8 goes there, and this should be the opcode 7 executing. I have AR1 count enable, and opcode 7 is AR1++. That's exactly right. So it's good. It's good. So far, so good. Let's test now the halt logic. So we just reset the system. Why is this? Oh, it's because of this. I'll reset the system, and let's start with opcode 7. I will only use opcodes 7 and 8 now, because it's very easy to see here by looking at just one control signal instead of a bunch of them. Okay, so opcode 7 is coming from instruction memory. The system has just come out of reset. If I press clock, this goes there. I still have nothing filled in the execution stage. The pipeline is not filled out yet. And I incremented the program counter, so I have to simulate it by changing the output of instruction memory to opcode 8. This you can ignore because it's not a load immediate, so this load here is irrelevant. So now we have a no-op here, we have an AR1++ here, and an AR2++ here. When I press the clock, the AR1 should execute and the AR2 should go to the IR to be decoded. AR1 count enable, yeah, so AR1 is here, AR2 is there, opcode 8, and then we incremented the program counter as well. So let's go back to opcode 7, which is AR1++. So we have now AR1 here, AR2 here, and AR1 there. Let's write this down. So the op immediate register is here, then we put the instruction register, and here we put the execution stage. I'll use another pen because this one is dying. So at this point we have AR1++ in the op immediate or the instruction fetch stage. So that's AR1++. Here we have AR2++, and here we have the previous AR1++, AR1++. Let's now halt the system. Halt is now low, which is active. So the system is now halted. What happens if I press clock? That's the test. The moment I press clock, what is here will have executed. It will complete the execution of what is in here. Press the clock. So the execution was completed, and now I have a no op over here because the system is halted. You see, that's exactly what we should have. Everything inactive here, including the control signals for the bus transceivers, which means that all transceivers of the CPU now will be tri-stated, and all the buses will be available to the I/O controller or another DMA device, direct memory access device, which is exactly what we want in the halt stage. Now here, I press the clock, so this will advance. So I have to change this to AR2++. Oh no, not yet. It's a halt. Wait. Yeah. So we have AR1++ here, AR2++ here, and AR1++ that was there. This has completed execution. So this is done. And now we are halting. And I can press the clock as many times as I want now. It's halted because the program counter load enable is now inactive in the halt state. The program counter is not advancing, so I should not advance this in the halt stage. And you see I'm pressing the clock and nothing is happening because we are halting. All right, so now let's come out of the halt state. Now I'm no longer halting. So let's make sure now that the pipeline will continue correctly despite we having halted the processor, the CPU. So if I press clock now, this should go there, and this should go here, and the program counter will advance. The AR1++ that was in the execution stage, that has been executed, so that's in the bag. Okay, we got this here. Here we have AR2++, as we should. So this one here has come down. And we advanced the program counter, so I have to change the value coming out of the instruction memory. I will again put AR2 here. So what we have now is AR2++ in the fetch stage, AR1++ in the decode stage, and AR2C, AR2++ in the execution stage. That's what we have now. In other words, this AR2 has come down and this AR1 has come down. So this is what happened. And this has come from the instruction memory, and the AR1++ that was here, that's executed, it falls off into a limbo because it's already done. So this is correct. We have come out of the halt state correctly. All right. If I press clock then again, this AR2 should go here to the IR, and the IR, what is in the IR, which is AR1++, should go to the execution stage. So now we have AR2 here. I see the signal is AR1 count enable, so this is AR1++, and because I pressed the clock, I have to advance the program counter. So now we have, I put an AR1 there again, AR1++, that's the next one. Here we have AR2++, and here we have AR1 count enable, so this is AR1++. And again the same thing, this AR1++ is now here in the execution stage. The AR2++ is executed, so it falls off, and this AR2++ is now here in the instruction decode stage, and I knew AR1++ has just come from memory. Let's halt it again now at this point. Now we are halting the processor. So if I press clock, this in the execution stage will finish execution on the rising edge of the clock, which will happen, and the rest should just stop. So let's see, this is the AR1++. It has executed. Now everything is inactive in the execution stage, meaning that everything is tri-stated, the processor is halted. So this AR1++ has now been executed because I pressed the clock. And in the rest, we still have everything as before. AR1++ here, and AR2++ there, and here we have a no op because it's in the halt stage. And I can press the clock now as many times as I want. You see the clock blinking here, and nothing happens. Everything stays as before. If I now come out of the halt state and I press the clock, this should go here and this should go there. So this is there, and because I pressed the clock, I advanced the program counter, so the output of instruction memory has changed again. So let's see what we got. Now we got a new AR2++ that has come in. Here we have opcode 7, that's AR1++, that has now gone from the instruction fetch to the instruction decode stage. And here in the execution stage, I see the signal AR2 count enable active, so that's the previous AR2++ instruction. So this AR2 has come here, this AR1 has come here, and a new AR2 has come in, and this is now being executed. So you see, this is correct. We are not missing the execution of any instruction, nothing's getting screwed up. The processor halts correctly. Whatever was in the execution stage finishes execution. Whatever was in the instruction decode stage will just wait during the halt state, and once we come out of halt, it will go to the execution stage and be executed instead of disappearing without being executed. So yeah, this is pretty good. I will run some more tests, but if you're watching this video now, it's because the other tests were okay. I'm not going to do an exhaustive test of this thing, like the functionality of the mail flags and all the conditional jumps, because it doesn't make much sense to test that in isolation. The whole thing will be tested once I have all cards placed in the backplane board, which is also the motherboard, which has the computer itself. The 4 cards are the CPU. A basic primary test equivalent to what we did through simulations in previous episodes is now done. I'm satisfied with this, and it's a good point to wrap for the year as well, because if there is some problem here, I still don't want to know it until the new year. I want to cross into the new year thinking that everything is fine, and it's a nice point of completion for me. One more of the things that I was doing this year that comes to a proper completion gives me a good feeling, good warm feeling of a productive year. There are many other things, my day job as well, and all those other things, but this is nice. This is a nice bonus. So this is it as far as testing this board. So this is it. I hope you've enjoyed it. And we will see each other again next year when it will all come together. Until then, have a very happy new year.